Oh, hello, Borough podcast fans. What the fuck is up? How you guys doing? Out there in Radioland? No, can't be Radioland. Not T-Land. Internet land? I don't know. Whatever. However you listen to this, just keep listening. That's all we ask. I'm gonna go with Internet land. What's up, Borough podcast fans out there in Internet land? Guys, we're brought to you this episode by Municipal Land Survey. You can reach them at 631-345-2658 for all your land surveying needs. Whatever you guys are doing on your property, why ever you need to know your property line, call them. They'll take care of you. They're fucking awesome. We're also brought to you by AS Engineering Services. You can reach them at 631-560-0259 or on those interconnected webs on that internet land that you guys are so aptly listening to us on at www.asengineeringservices.com. Check them out. They're a full-scale architectural and engineering firm. They will build you whatever your little heart desires. Doesn't matter what it is, they can do it. I'm saying that. They don't say that, but they could probably do it. I have faith in them. Last but not least, we're brought to you by Keto Fresh, a ketogenic meal delivery service. You could follow them on Instagram at keto.fresh.ny. Check out their menu. Check them out for delivery options, pricing, all that good stuff. Guys, this episode we have Eric and Marc. Eric and Marc have been on the podcast before. It was a lot more serious-toned podcast last time. We were talking about some racial tensions and whatnot. If you didn't listen to that one, very informative, very entertaining. Go back and listen to it. This one, we delve into a little bit more what they are into, which is they're both DJs and music producers. So we get into that. We talk a lot about house music, which is what they are predominantly known for. They run Erimarc Records, or Productions, rather. Excuse me. And they have a EP that is coming out in the coming weeks. So take a listen. You'll enjoy it. We had a great conversation. That's it. Hope you enjoy.
Money is better than no money.
All right, guys, we're live. Let's get into it. Borough podcast. Yarbs.
Eric.
And our guests.
Eric.
And Marc.
Montana and Barnes.
That's right. And guys, we are back at it again. This is your second time around on the Borough podcast.
Yep.
This time we're going to go a little lighter, a little more upbeat, a little more fun, and talk about the other things that you guys do. So, what are we here for?
You go. You start it off. You like to talk.
I figured I'd let you start off, but we are DJs. We play house music.
All night long.
All night long.
House music all night long.
That is, let's just say that for the most part, I've always enjoyed playing house. It's obviously one of my favorite types of music to play, and coming from a DJ, just as DJs go, I play a little bit of everything myself over the years. I've had many different things that I've done. Played all different types of formats, and that goes everything from venues to private events and things like that. So as far as that goes, my taste in music just varies. But I love playing house music. This is the focus now for Eric and myself. We started a label. He spearheaded a lot of the things that we're doing right now. We met several years ago, I'm going to say 5-6 years ago, and we hit it off, playing music through a mutual friend, Kenny Kaz. Shout out to Kenny Kaz for all his work over the years and bringing people together. So we decided that we wanted to bring things to another level, and in this business, I mean, things, as a lot of people already know, have changed in the business, the genre, the music business as a whole. And as much as DJs have evolved, doing concerts and stadiums and things like that, the business changed to a point where just making music is really not enough. Even artists suffer this nowadays, and they're just not making money on selling songs. So the point is that, getting into the issue of bringing things to another level. Most DJs that are doing big things, world-renowned DJs, have hit songs, have hit albums, and the basic concept is, listen, if you're not using the music to promote yourself and express, or rather doing remix. At one time it was the remixer, and then it really evolved into something even greater than that. So, and a lot of the work, they were paying a lot of money at one time for remixes and so forth and so on. So in order to make money, a lot of guys moved into more, it's always been that way in terms of promoters, booking agents and things, having big name DJs tour the world. But it was a game changer with the David Guettas and the Paul Oakenfolds and
the
things like that.
The guys that were producing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and producing. It's kind of always been that way in a sense, because you had, let's say, whether it be the Louis Vegas, Kenny Dope, and I use them as examples because those are the bigger names. Mm-hmm. Again, if you're producing, and producing's not for everybody, as I had found. I've done remixes. I tried doing producing. Didn't work for me. Mm-hmm. But I was working with artists, different concept, trying to really actually be a full-blown producer with having an artist or real songs. It's very, very difficult if you're not musically inclined, if you're not a musician. And just being a DJ is really not enough to make that point. But as far as what we're trying to do is really make music to promote ourselves. As much as we love the music itself, on a business level, it's a tool that doesn't take away from the love of the music and the love of making music. And Eric decided that, all right, let's just do it. And he started to get more involved with purchasing equipment and buying programs and things like that. So he made an investment, and we decided we would be strong together. And now we're on this, call it, this venture. So that's the Erimarc label. It was his idea. I help arrange the music and promote and whatever contacts I have in the business. So that's my end of it. And again, it's the house genre, underground. I think we kind of have a style of our own as well. So we kind of don't fit in any particular category. We kind of cover a few as far as house, because house is broken down into different types. We're not so much EDM as much as we are groove oriented type of house.
All EDM.
Not at all.
Period.
Not at all. And we're not using vocalists, so we're not doing songs in terms of as far as that goes. Vocal house. We're not even in that category.
It's crazy to me. Like I've been listening to house music probably since like the mid to late '90s. And the evolution of what electronic music was in general. Then it was like you had like house, techno,
super fast techno.
That was like that was it. Like that was it for electronic music. Like that there wasn't really. Now it's everything's considered EDM, electronic dance music. But now there's 8,000 different variations of that. Of just that. And then you have there's so many different variations of house music. You have tropical house, you have jungle house, you have drum and bass. It's like, whoa, why do you have to be labeled as something? Why don't you just make some music?
Right.
Make some fucking good music. That's it.
That's it.
I know a few people that are younger than me. Actually, this one kid in particular who actually works for me. And he's 22 years old, and he's real into going to festivals and stuff like that right now and stuff, and he's super into like dubstep and and I'm like, that's just kind of noise. That's what are you doing there?
People enjoy it though, so
I mean, many people
take
say
it
that.
For a little bit.
It gives me anxiety if I'm there a little bit too long, but. Right. I mean, to each their own. And what I've seen, just as far as EDM music and the bubble or whatever it is right now, it brings more interest to electronic music as a whole. So now you're seeing these guys, like a lot of the kids, they love Carl Cox. I mean, realistically, 10 years ago, you couldn't have a conversation with anybody about Carl Cox unless they were from Europe.
Right.
But 20 years ago, you could have had a conversation with tons of people about Carl Cox.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. He was known and he was forgotten. And now he's back.
A huge DJ again.
He's one of my favorites. And what Mark was talking about was producing house records, and he was talking about the big names. I'm not going to say anybody in particular, but a lot of these producers don't always produce.
Oh, I
their
know.
own music. Yeah.
Right.
So,
My friend's uncle actually produces one of like the number one, or he overall probably number one over the years, but he's always top 3 in the world.
Right.
I won't say his name
right.
at all, but produces and sells him tracks
Uh-huh.
that then this DJ then I guess remixes or tweaks a little bit and then
Exactly.
plays them, and these are my own. But it's like, how are you producing music when you're on tour 12 months out of the year? Like,
Right.
there's no way you're making any new music.
Right.
Well,
That's very very common practice, and that's throughout the entire industry.
music in general.
Music in general is like that, and I guess it goes for almost, let's just say, I'll go out on a limb and say that probably goes for a lot of businesses in general.
Oh, sure.
Where other people are doing the work, the groundwork, and it funnels through, because everybody wants their work to be recognized and used. And then it kind of also, getting back to the original point, it becomes almost like a system where they're getting their material from certain people because these people turn out good stuff. But your point is that the person putting their name on it is not actually creating it, and that's really the point. But yeah, that's it is a common practice, and that's hip hop and everything else.
Oh, yeah.
Beats, rhymes, whatever.
I think it's something newer to dance music because
Definitely.
For the longest time, the DJs, like you were saying, like huge events and venues and things like that, and they weren't putting on concerts, so to speak. Now,
Right.
they're not doing a lot of mixing. They're not playing anything. They're almost like being voiceover or
They're like hype
I
men.
do see.
Yeah,
I do
exactly.
see some. I don't follow a lot of them, but I do see the gimmicks and things like that.
Oh, there's
not
so
that they're
many
not.
gimmicks,
They're probably
too.
good DJs.
I
in
don't
terms
know.
of-
There's a guy that wears a bucket on his head.
A bucket.
Yeah, you got-
there's,
and
there's
then,
a guy
you know-
that wears a bucket on his head with
Wow.
like 2
I guess the most
black
popular-
X's for his eyes. I can't think if Squishy is his name. DJ Squishy. It's ridiculous.
That's funny. I'm thinking of Dead Mouse would be like the most popular
Yeah.
one, right?
He makes
That gimmick-
He does some stuff on his own though. I think.
I
he
mean, the
wrote-
fact that people buy into that is a little bit strange for me, but
Yeah.
if it works for you and people love it, then hey,
Right.
more power
Because
to you.
Deadmau5 actually is a producer.
And he's probably a really good DJ.
He is. And
know?
he said the reason he wears it is because he doesn't like crowds. He's afraid. He started wearing it in the beginning because he was afraid of the crowds. He didn't want to look up and see all these people out there. He
Get freaked out.
Right. The best way to hide yourself is to put a big thing on your head. And that's how it all started.
Right.
It works.
He started
Just
DJing
close
because he was
the
a
curtain.
Yeah. He was actually a computer code writer,
Mm-hmm.
and he got hired to write some of the programming for Serato. I'm pretty sure it was Serato, or it might have been
Is
one
that
of the other
Deadmau5?
ones.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
interesting.
he was a coder,
Uh-huh.
and when he realized like his job was to then make music
Right.
with this software, just because he was troubleshooting and testing it and making sure that his code worked correctly, he figured, I can probably make some tracks too, and he did that, and I guess they caught on, and that's supposedly how he started DJing. I think it probably says it on his Wikipedia, but I don't remember.
Well, I was alluding before to the fact that some DJs say graduate to producer status or again remixer status, and there's no obviously people may not know this, but there's no formula in the music business as a whole. Period. There's no. Some people get lucky. Some people right place at the right time, or you're so genius and somebody recognizes. There's no formula. It's just like anything in the entertainment business.
Right place, right time. most of the
You
time.
promote yourself enough. Some people promote themselves. They're not the best, but they're good enough to make a mark. Let's say. But it may not be for everybody. But that whole graduation thing, and again, at one time it was really the goal was to be a renowned remixer, because your name was on, you were able to, let's say, if you got to the point where you were Hex Hector or whomever, going back to whether it be Jelly Bean or Shep Pettibone, anybody that, but you became like the number one person, and then now you're on the major labels, and you were working with, Madonna songs,
stars,
Michael Jackson,
yeah.
Prince, or whomever. So the higher you got on that ladder, the more recognized you were in the business for your, call it, quality work or your sound. But things, but then again, now that the flip side to that for me is the evolution of this world touring DJ who's now really looked at more like an artist as opposed to a DJ.
They're almost like a figurehead now.
They're big celebrity status as opposed to being just, I don't want to say just local DJ, but there's a ton of great DJs out there. But, very competitive. Competition is one thing, but promotion, again, your following and things have, now with the social media, it really has. Okay, now it's 20 years, but I'm just saying, it's changed. A lot of things have changed. So, the goal would be, like for us, it's to be recognized, of course, have some success with the releases, and we can get into maybe talking about our upcoming EP release that we just signed to Vexler Records. We were releasing tracks on our own, but maybe Eric can kind of tell you about some of that stuff.
We're not going to give them all to Vexler.
We're not giving all
everything.
No.
But we do have a current deal that we're closing, and shout out to Gino Love he's another house producer.
Nice.
And he's putting out like a couple of 2 to 3 tracks a month.
Wow.
And that's one busy guy.
That's a lot of work.
One busy label.
That's a lot of work.
And he just signed the record to Nervous, which hit the top 20 something on the, call it the house soul charts, or I'm not sure exactly what chart, but he did well with that with Nervous Records. That's recent. That's now.
Yeah.
Clap Your Hands track that he did. But maybe did you have any questions? Because
I got a couple questions, just sort of about like both of your backgrounds, just because. When you guys got into house music, like what year was it, and what was the scene like at the time?
For me, it was '89, and that was right around. I think it was right around when house music became more popular.
Mm-hmm.
Right around that time.
Yep.
Who was it then? It was Frankie Knuckles, Marshall Jefferson.
And it was a couple of years before that it was already buzzing.
But it hadn't gotten really huge. And I was in college at that point, and I hadn't even started DJing at that point until I met my friend Jeff Brown. Shout out to Jeff Brown. Jeff Brown was the local school DJ, so I started hanging out with him. I'd always been interested in DJing, but I never really took it seriously until I met Jeff and started hanging around with Jeff. So that summer I came home, bought my first tables and my first mixer, and started playing house music. That was it. I mean, I always played R&B and hip-hop, but it was house that really had me. And it still has me to this day. So yeah, I was doing a lot of college work back then. I went to school in Providence.
Okay.
And Providence is a big college town. There was URI, PC, Brown, RISD, Johnson and Wales. So I did all the parties for that town. Plus there was a club called the Copa that I did every now and then. And it was all house music. It was very rare that I was even asked to do any hip-hop. So even back then, house music was something huge. I think it's that 4 on the floor beat, that heavy bass, it just drives people insane.
Yeah.
Especially when they start drinking and get loose.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. So Mark was talking about how we work. I do produce a lot of stuff. I bounce it off of Mark, because sometimes, you need a second set of ears. Mm-hmm. But he's the DJ. He does things with the stuff that I make that I never thought of doing with it. His style is very smooth, and I don't know. He's just a great DJ. That's my boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're done. We're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, let's get out of here.
Leave on that high note.
But, I'll tell you the way I feel about, let's just say we're talking about house music, and I've been around for a minute. I've been through eras of the club scene, and that's no joke. Everything dating back to the early '80s, and a lot of the dance music. It didn't become dance music until about then, because it was either disco, and it started to change around that time in the early '80s. And 98.7 Kiss had come along, and there was a big. They just started around that time. I want to say it was like '81, if I'm not mistaken, '81, and it was kind of a big deal because going back, you had 92 KTU, which originally was Disco 92. What I'm really trying to say is that the music changed, naturally it changes, but the idea of disco, quote unquote, versus dance music, and what happens is you have the influences of, because the labels have a lot to do with it too, and what direction they want to go in with the artists and things like that. That's the way things, pretty much are. At least back then it was like that, where the labels kind of steer the artists in certain directions that they feel they want to go in and things like that, right, to make money or whatever the deal is. So the style of music with Michael Jackson coming out with certain songs and everybody else, it started to change. Then now you talk the technology, the beat machines, the rhythm, the synthesizers, and that also big influence on how the sound of what's. And then you have pioneers going back from the disco days, that people that use things that nobody used, and then 10 years later everybody's using it. Mm-hmm. Whether you talk about Man Parrish, people that were more synthesizer oriented and electronic oriented versus the live drummers or the live musicians. So the dance music going with KTU to Kiss, and then you had BLS, and then all of a sudden now you start to have a bit of a division in what style, because back in the day you only had two stations and they all played what was hot, which was the disco, mm-hmm. and then maybe the R&B. It was one or the other, and now things started to change, and labels popped up, Emergency Records, and they influenced the change of the sound of what people were dancing to. So there was a big change in the early '80s, and for me, I listened to all that stuff. I played all that stuff. So when I listen to something new, or if I'm trying to do something, or if I have to, let's say, come up with an idea, there's all those years, there's decades of experience and music, a library that I can sift through personally in my mind and through my collection that I could refer to. But a lot of the music kind of changed, and it was a big jump, and then there was another big jump when Kiss, and I talk about the radio stations because they're very heavily influenced when they bring on the mixers late on weekends and doing the mix sets on Saturday nights, and that was when you really got to hear the down and dirty stuff, and people could let loose. They kind of always had that, even going back to, again, I keep saying the disco days. Ted Currier, again, Shep Pettibone, Tony Humphries. BLS had Timmy Regisford and what?
The two Puerto Rican guys. Was it three?
Oh, Latin Rascals.
Yes,
Latin Rascals. And they were known for their editing. So a lot of people got to show their stuff on these mix shows on the weekends. But the music kind of evolved and changed. And once... and I gotta say that a lot of the house music was influenced by garage music. I don't know if you actually know what garage music, quote unquote, is, but it's Larry Levan worked in a club in Manhattan called the Garage, the Paradise Garage, right? And me being there around that time, and not only did I go to the clubs for whatever events or just to go with my friends. I was always trying to work, so I didn't have a lot of nights where I actually got out. But he was playing stuff ESG. I mean, he played Lolita Holloway. A lot of it was in fact disco because there is a history there. But the Frankie Knuckles or a lot of people that were influenced by that cell, okay, what was going on with Larry Levan.
Well, maybe we should back up a little bit.
And Chicago, this is like, I think it's kind of important to the genre. Chicago had a sound that they were putting out, but a lot of what they were producing was mimicking the actual songs that were being played here at the Paradise Garage or the Loft. Dave Mancuso played. He's one of the original DJs that in this business. That he's a renowned pioneer in this business and one of the originals. But these guys were playing certain songs. Okay, it wasn't house music because there was no such thing as house music. But the garage style of dance music was a very disco-y type sound, but it wasn't limited to just disco-y type, really kind of, I say la-la type disco.
What did they call it? Like if you were going to like a club in those days, like in the 80s, just like a dance club, we're just going to listen to dance music? Like
disco.
They still calling it the disco?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, up until it just became a club.
Yeah.
He's just going to go
But
to the club.
that was years later.
Like we're a little younger than you, so like I grew up with Disco Sucks and like hearing like all that stuff.
I grew up with Disco Sucks when disco was popular.
See, I came a little bit after that, but so they were still calling like nightclubs like the disco or
Right.
something like that,
Right.
but they knew it wasn't like disco. They weren't playing the hustle.
No.
But they were playing like more modern, I guess, 80s dance music. Michael Jackson. Who else was real big in the 80s?
Lolita Holloway, First Choice. Who else do we have? Colonel Abrams.
There were a lot of
Yeah,
them.
too
And
many. Yeah.
and just like anything else, you had the ones that were good enough to put out quality stuff, good stuff, and then you had the one you always have the one hit wonders, and it is in itself. It's I mean, I don't want to put the business down in any way, but in itself, it's a very I don't know if transparent or kind of flimsy type. What happens is that they kind of, a lot of times they'll just produce a song, and it's just really just a good, and it just so happens to be a really great track, and it's just call it a one hit wonder. Maybe not get on the pop charts, but it'll be good for the dance community. But yet there isn't a huge push to make this group or so-called group anything big. Except for that one song. So, I hate to say it, but some things were just like put together because it was maybe just the electronic, using the equipment, getting a good vocal down, and kind of just throw it together, and you have a genius that puts out something that's like, wow, this is amazing. But yet it's not a bona fide group that is trying to actually be a big name in the business. I don't know if you follow what I'm saying.
Just kind of throwing it together almost, I don't want to say just for the
It's
money.
like one-shot deals.
Like, let's just throw this together. We got a couple of good ideas.
Let's record this, and we'll do the paperwork and blah blah blah, and then
sometimes
so even they didn't really feel too committed to it, but yet they were doing their thing.
And that was instrumental in bringing house music, because when Frankie left Larry and went to Chicago, there was a club called the Warehouse.
Right.
So Frankie brought that New York style with him to Chicago.
That's what I was kind of getting to.
Yeah, you were taking too long, buddy.
Yeah.
So people started going to the Warehouse to listen to what Frankie Knuckles was spinning. So they go to the record store and they'd ask for that house music because of the Warehouse. So instead of saying Warehouse, they said house music. And that's how the name house music became.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Some of the big songs that were popping up that became big here, that were really kind of just like that's really hot. They were bass lines that we knew already, that were taken from songs that were played 5 to 10 years ago at the Paradise Garage. Again, Moody by ESG being one of them on a track called Like This. Big track for Chicago house. I'm not even trying to say that they did anything that was so, let's say, to copy, because sampling, it was a great idea.
Yeah, it was huge.
Actually, it was a revolutionary idea, because they were now saying, hey, guess what? We're going to take that bass line and we're going to twist it up, and we're going to do this. We're going to add this. We're going to do sampling. We're going to go crazy. Guess what? There's no vocals on this track. It's just all this repetitive sampling. But they did also come out with a lot of original stuff as well. But I guess what I'm really saying is that Chicago house is a kind of an offshoot or reinvention of New York garage, Paradise Garage style music. But they brought it to they created a whole movement, call it,
Right. And today their house music is still different from everybody else's house music. I, for one, don't really care for it. But
Eric's not a big fan of Chicago house. I'm not the biggest fan of Chicago house, but they, as a DJ, music is music. It doesn't matter where it comes from.
You can appreciate it.
If it gets me, makes me feel great, and I love it, I just love it. So, there's a lot of stuff that they had us time, and they were putting out songs that were made on 4-track cassettes.
Right.
Okay, and then they had their own pressing plants, so they was spitting out record after record, and the quality was extremely poor.
And that was their sound.
But that was their sound.
yeah, sound.
Now
the popping of the record, that was part of
all
Chicago
that
house
was
sound.
like, okay, you kind of like make that excuse that this really shitty quality. I'm sorry, guys, I have to say it, but it is what it is. I mean, that now becomes okay. Hey, listen, that's that Chicago sound.
Right.
It's part of it. That dirty whatever. Okay,
Well,
urban, contemporary, whatever.
I was watching the interview of the guy who pressed most of the records for the Chicago DJs, and he said, I apologize to everybody, but all that popping and crackling was because I took old records that were laying around the shop and I remelted them down.
Right.
Right.
That's what they did. They were a little budget conscious.
Yeah.
You got to do what you got to do.
That's it.
But that was their thing.
Yeah. So I'm more into New York and New Jersey house. The kind of house that was played at Zanzibar or Shelter. That kind of house music, what really moves me. Not to say I hate all Chicago house, but it's not my biggest.
It really was a lot to be desired. But that goes for, listen, anything that's good, I can appreciate it. So I didn't have a preference. Plus, when you had to manage as many records as I had to manage, you learn to appreciate things and kind of move on, not pick just one particular thing.
When you guys were just talking about how the sound was a little bit rough coming out of some of the stuff from Chicago, I got on my phone, I'm trying to find out what year. There was a Candy Station song, I think, You've Got the Love, and it was a remix, but it's gritty when you hear the original one.
Candy Staten?
Yeah, Candy Staten, yep. And it's gritty in the beginning, and I'm like, wondering if maybe that was originally pressed by this guy in Chicago.
I don't think they were in Chicago though. I don't think so.
Oh,
if I remember correctly.
Well, Muddy Records didn't only come out of Chicago. I can tell you that.
Right, but that particular,
because it's from the source. If you produce a Muddy record, nothing you do in mastering and pressing is going to help it.
Right.
So.
Right.
But they started, unfortunately, they started out muddy, and it was muddy all the way through the process. So
well, they didn't have
difference.
everything. Yeah, they didn't have everything that we have.
But
today.
we've had shit. I've gotten plenty of crappy records. Then we hit an age of bootlegs out here, but that was really towards the end of vinyl. But that's only because records weren't available.
Right.
And somebody said, "Hey, I'm just going to press them and release them." And vinyl was starting to dwindle off in terms of the manufacturing, the record companies. So these guys decided to put out their own vinyl. Let the DJ, the DJs want these records,
right?
And we're going to charge them another $2 to get it.
How was DJing when you actually had to bring vinyl with you?
I was just about to say, I kind of saw, when I was going out and going to clubs, I kind of started to see that changeover from the DJ who brought records to the CDs and to that. So like one of my good friends and roommate was a DJ and Chris Kenny, and he used to.
Oh, okay, Chris, good friend of mine.
Yeah, and so literally, I remember humping fucking.
You was roommate?
Yeah.
Okay, well
Yeah.
then you got first-hand experience.
Tons of
Because I know
experience.
Kenny was a very busy guy.
Hand
He's
trucks,
busy today.
crates.
Yeah.
So much,
That's right.
and it was not that I have less respect for the guys that do it now, but I'm just like, you guys just don't.
You have
fucking
no
know.
idea.
You
Yeah.
don't know.
You have no idea.
I was basically on I guess five. I don't want to say 5 crates. Everything was. Most of the stuff was just in case you needed it.
Yeah.
If I have to go into a reggae set, if I have to go into a hip hop set,
You gotta be ready.
I don't want to be caught with my pants down,
Yep.
Right.
so to speak. So
And
I was always
you have to always
envious.
have a little bit of everything.
I was envious of the guys who could carry one bag of records. I'm like, how the hell are you carrying one bag of records?
what are you playing for 10 minutes?
Right.
Well, that's different. I mean, if you're coming in for an hour or 2 hours.
Well, even an hour, I'm still bringing 2 or 3 crates with me.
Right.
You know, like you said, you
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
an obsession
Yeah.
of DJs. They have to have, like, I can't leave this home just in case.
Right. And the organization was like the memory that every DJ that I've ever been around and known. It's like you say a song and they're like, "Oh, I know exactly what it is," it's like, and they got it already. It's like you have like 600 records there. How the fuck did you?
I still would rather do that than,
Because back in the days, we were more intimate with our records. We
Oh,
didn't,
yeah.
you know, because now we can just download it if we want to, whenever we feel
Yeah,
like
it's-
it.
but
Back
the-
then, we went to the store. I went to Rock and Soul every
You used to have
Saturday.
to, like,
Yeah, there's a
chase stuff
relationship
down,
with
right?
12-inch.
And order it from Europe and
Sorry,
things like that.
hate to say
Right.
it that way.
Right. Go to Rock and Soul every Saturday on the train, and I bought maybe 5 or 6 records, and I play those 5 and 6 records along with the records I bought the week before. So it was more intimate, so you
Yeah.
knew where everything was
Yep.
then. Now you look in some people's computers, like Solos, and you're like, how the hell does this guy find any music? It's not organized.
Because
Yeah,
people know where they're just like any DJ, even with the records. I mean, I've seen DJs with. It used to break my heart to see the way they kept their records,
Yeah.
throwing them in the crates without putting them in the covers, record on top of record. I'm like, how do you play records and scratching them up that way?
Right.
But so you did have, even with records, people are disorganized. If you know where to find your files, then I guess that's okay.
Yeah.
But that relationship is real because, and any DJ could tell you, there's nothing like grabbing a 12-inch record, okay, and you have the artwork. It's something again. It's say a viable thing. It's a kind of a piece of history in a sense because it's got its own identity, but with being digitized, it's got almost it's plastic. It's it's like
There's no
blah.
feeling to it.
It could be the best track around, but you can't touch it. You can't. There's no even the artwork on the computer. It's all on the computer, so it's only on screen. So it's virtual.
When you say an artwork, it's just funny because but a lot of them do have artwork, but I felt like every DJ, their prized possession was always that white label that only they had, and people. Oh,
Well, that's another
what do you
thing.
got? What do you got there? What's it,
If you
where'd
didn't
that
have
come
the
from?
record,
You're like, no.
not like today. I mean, once Napster came out, it was over, and there was a time that you had to have that connection with somebody to get a
Yeah.
CD copy. Which again, at that time, not everybody was burning CDs. And once Napster came out and everybody had a CD burner, it was over in terms of the exclusivity of having a promo. I used to get tons of promo. I was a Billboard reporter, and with that comes a lot of promoters that want to send you material. Every label sending you music, and you get all those white labels and everything. But if you didn't have that vinyl, and of course now you had CDs. But the point is that if you didn't have that in your possession, you weren't. The best you could do is make a cassette copy, and that certainly wasn't working for any DJ. So then now you're talking bootlegs and things like that. But that having that 12-inch, you were the man because nobody had it. So if you didn't get the import, if you didn't run to the store on time, or if you didn't get that promo before it came out in the store, okay, you just didn't have it, and you weren't going to get it until it became available. So now it's, of course, total opposite.
And some DJs would actually black out their labels. So
Oh,
no
yeah.
one
Oh,
knew.
that was
Nobody
old,
knows.
Yes,
the old
no
school
one
thing
knew.
of
Yeah.
scratching out the
Yeah.
name of the record so that nobody knew what it was.
Shoulder slugs.
It was a big deal to
Exactly.
It was a big deal to be, let's say, a DJ. If you were in a record pool or a
Right.
club, it was extremely coveted, and a lot of guys were very standoffish about bringing people into their circle,
Sharing music.
sharing anything, because they were like gods. I hate to use that term, but they were like gods in the business, so to speak.
I remember having a conversation or being privy to a conversation between two DJs. Both of them now were in their 40s, and they were real big names at the time, and still pretty much now. One of them is just a DJ. The other one maybe does a little bit of producing. The other guy was a big producer. He used to DJ at CPI out in the Hamptons and a whole bunch of places in the city, and they're having a discussion with a younger guy who was complaining, and this was after the switch to all digital music, and he was, oh, it stinks, I have to carry all my stuff, and they were just like, they both let him have it. They were like, you don't understand. Just to even start DJing when we were young, it cost several $1,000s
Right.
worth of
Yeah.
equipment.
That's another thing.
Yeah.
Forget about your music.
Right.
And you used to have to hunt down records.
Right.
And you'd hunt down certain remixes of records.
Yep.
And, oh,
Yeah.
man, they let this guy have it for like
Yeah.
15 minutes. And he just had this like blank, he was a kid in his 20s, had a blank look on his face. And he was just like, oh, man, I opened up my mouth around the wrong guys.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they don't understand. I mean, Mark is a little more nostalgic about those days. I don't miss them at all.
Well,
I don't miss carrying those
Five,
things.
No, you
five
know what?
crates of
Yeah.
crates filled with records and a
Yeah.
hand
2
truck
turntables, a mixer.
going up to the third floor.
Exactly.
it's all relative. That's all you had, and you had to make it work, and it was fun, and it was, it was a lot more work. I mean, you can't compare sitting home, downloading a song free, not leaving your, not even brushing your teeth, let's say, just to make a point, as opposed to waiting until a certain day to run out when you get paid, or let's say Sunday, run to the record store just to
Jumping
see
on a
what's
train
out.
to go into the city.
Either go to the city or call the, or oh, I can't get it here, and I got to go all the way over here. And again, to me, it was something that we loved to do. So it was
It showed your true passion.
venture,
Yeah,
and
right.
so it was fun that way. But certainly wouldn't choose to do that if I could sit home. Carrying crates of records versus putting a flash drive around my neck.
Right.
So
500 records on a flash drive or 500 records in a crate. Flash drive.
Flash drive.
Yeah,
every
it's going to
time.
win every time.
So one of the other things that I've noticed too about not so much about the music, but the venues, it doesn't seem like there's that many clubs anymore. Like I don't.
there aren't.
Like what happened? Like I remember,
Not like 15 years ago.
No, Limelight, Sound Factory, Tunnel. Like there's nothing like that anymore.
No.
It's terrible.
You know what? They're just starting to pop up again a little bit in Brooklyn.
Yeah, we were talking about that last week.
Yeah, last week.
Yeah.
Not really major clubs, like these big rooms that used to be around that fit several thousand people, but there are rooms that fit a couple hundred people very nicely. And they're playing a lot more underground music,
Right.
not just like the commercial EDM and stuff like that. They're bringing back some of like the older DJs. I went to see Gabriel and Dresden at Output. Not that they're that old, but for me and like for my generation, they're like late 90s to early 2000s.
I mean, in DJ years, that's up
Yeah,
there.
it's a
DJ
long
years,
time.
yeah.
It's a long time. Yeah, they also have like in
That makes me
Brooklyn,
a dinosaur.
yeah, pop-up
That's
spots.
why I hang out with Eric. He keeps me young.
So there may be a club in this one building this week, but next week it'll be that same club. It'll be in a different building. And then there's some that open up in the daytime rather than at night. That's a new trend.
Right.
I don't see how you can do that, but
It's a lot better for people that are like older and can't stay out that
Yeah,
late
yeah.
anymore.
they can get up at 8 in the morning, but they can't get up at 8 at night.
Yeah, no way.
You talk about those clubs. There was the ecstasy era, I call it. Okay,
Was that like mid to late 90s, early 2000s?
For us out here, it's. I'm sorry, what?
I was gonna say, what is that, like mid to late 90s to early 2000s?
Yeah, around the exactly. That's around the same time that all this was happening. There was an evolution of progressive versus techno. Prior to that, there was techno versus what you might call commercial house music, and there was a big jump, going from. And I got to say that I really loved, because back then, excuse me, because there was no quote unquote EDM, it was just a style of music. It was really new. It was hard hitting, called, let's say, Twilight 22, is it?
Yeah, Twilight 22.
And those guys coming out with the Get Ready for This and Two Unlimited and all those guys, right? Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
That was hot shit, and it was new, and nobody was doing stuff like that. Even if somebody else was it wasn't as popular, it wasn't as tight, it wasn't as crossover, and I loved all that stuff. Get Ready for This was one of the first songs I started playing. Then you talk about Living Joy, who came out with their sound. So there was an evolution of, let's say, progressive, or rather techno, and then there was a softer version of that, which, the way I see it, with more drums, more drum oriented, and that's where you have the Razor and Guido sound, maybe stemming from, you might say, Armand, or even Jonathan Peters. But those guys were all they developed a sound that was pretty hard, and I don't want to say noisy, but it was just very, very progressive. It was they a lot of riffs and things like that, driving, and then samples of the vocals. So as much as it was in the same, let's say, in the same style of house music, the sounds that they were using was very aggressive, but it wasn't techno, and it wasn't that really loud banging techno. Because there was a big difference between that, so you kind of had a big separation between underground. There was always the gospel underground movement, and they never wavered. That's that crowd. I kind of grew up with that, the Gladys Pizarro's, and again Little Louis Vegas, and all the people involved with the Strictly Rhythm. I forget, Underground Nation they had. That's in the city. It may not be big on a large scale, but they had their core audience, their following. But everywhere else, everybody was doing the more progressive stuff, the techno, and it was an interesting. I find it an interesting evolution. And then EDM comes along later on, and to me now, I think we're lost again. And as far as speaking as a DJ, if I was working in a club. If I was working in a club in Long Island, I probably wouldn't be playing the type of music that Eric and I produce or play as DJs, because a lot of people out here are just not into that particular sound. They want to hear the EDMs, or maybe, let's say, whether it be hip hop or whatever it might be, but it's not going to be underground. But my point is, the music itself, unfortunately, I feel like it's lost. But I know that there are a lot of songs that people do like, and there's still more on the, call it the EDM side. I just think that there's a big gap right now. Right now, I don't know. I couldn't tell you the big club record right now in the clubs. And I would love to know. I would love for anybody to tell me. Text me, hit us up, or, on the show, whatever it is. Tell me, hey, listen, you're not listening to, tell me a DJ I could listen to know, hey, this guy's playing the latest and greatest, So I don't like to be down on the business, but.
Yeah, I don't know where they are. I don't know who they are, where they are, what they're listening to.
Even DJs, who's big now? I know, we know Theo, we know Kenny. Chris Kenny. And they're still doing their thing out here.
Like, as far in New York City, when I go there to listen to club music, like, as far as, like, New York City locals, like Victor Calderone or Danny Teneglia or Boris, I know sort
Boris
of
is always busy.
They hold their own. They usually, one of them is playing, at least every weekend here or there at one of the decent sized venues. But those are that's like New York's, I guess.
And what are they playing? You know, that's also for me is like
they're all playing tech now. That's
tech.
It's what they're all playing.
Right.
Tech house.
Mm-hmm. So,
and you know what? It's what's interesting. I feel like tech house is a little bit better than just techno.
I would agree.
Because I used to not particularly care for techno, and then tech house came out, and I can sort of stomach that. But those DJs, all three of them, used to be progressive house guys, and they sort of, Victor Calderon and Boris transitioned into tech house, and you know what? I don't find myself really wanting to go to see them as much. I don't know if it's just that I'm getting older and I'm almost reverting back to what I listened to while I was in my 20s, but I don't know. I haven't been able to bite on to that full-fledgingly yet. And I have similar opinions about the EDM music. I think, you know what, it's great because it gets more people involved in electronic or house music as a whole, and you get a little bit of spin-off with that, especially once the kids get old enough to go to clubs, because these festivals, when you go, it's 16 to 22-year-olds chewing on their lips because they've eaten ecstasy all day in the sun, and you could literally put on like organ grinder, monkey, or carnival music, and it's going to sound good at that point. And they're there for the light show and the fireworks, and that guy that throws a cake into the crowd.
Right.
And that's it.
The drugs in the water.
Yeah, the drugs in the water, and that's it. But when they get a little bit older and they can't do ecstasy every weekend, then they graduate and maybe they listen to some more soulful house music genres as well.
Right. Well, tech house used to be a little bit boring when it first came out. It's still evolving because I didn't like tech house in the beginning either. It was just so repetitive, so boring. There was nothing to it. But now they're starting to add a little variation to the tech house. It still has the booming bass. Still has the instrument sounds into it. But now they're adding vocals to the tech house. And
I feel
it's getting better.
They needed a little bit of vocals,
Yes.
even if it was just a couple little samples.
Right.
You need that.
Right.
To lighten it up a little bit.
Most definitely. Yeah. Otherwise, it just gets very boring and repetitive.
But all right, so we went down memory lane. So let's get into what you guys are doing now.
What we're doing now. What we're basically doing now. Well, this guy's taking songs from commercials.
I'm giving him all these ideas. Call them novelty ideas.
He spits something out of his mouth. Usually, and then I get home. I'm like, well,
Maybe that'll work.
yeah, maybe that'll work. There's that Tech Mobile commercial. Did you see it? It was
T-Mobile.
Oh,
we
T-Mobile,
call the track Tech
We call
Mobile
it,
because
yeah.
he actually made a track. But go ahead.
It was doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, and then there was a boom, doo-doo-doo-doo, boom. It was a T-Mobile.
T-Mobile did a
And
commercial
Netflix.
with Netflix,
Yes.
offering Netflix, and they edited their jingle
With
Netflix, and it was
Right.
to a rhythm.
Yeah, I
And
know
it was
exactly.
very distinct. It was purposely done that way. And when I listened to it, and it was a much lower tempo, so even for me, if it was let's say closer to a hip hop beat, it was ba-doom, but it had a rhythm to it. So
Right.
if you repeated it, if you looped it, it would continue that way. So it just kept ringing in my head. So I told him, I was like, listen, did you see that commercial? Just fuck around with it, see what you think. And then he came out, and I got to say that I played it at a party, and the guy that was hosting the party said, that's fucking genius. Well, I have to go back and say that he texted me after he put it together, trying to figure out how to lay it out. But he said either, what did you say? Either you're a genius or crazy or something?
I don't know what
I'm
it was.
both. I like to think I'm both. I'm probably more crazy than anything. But yeah, go ahead. So yeah, he put that together and it came out pretty hot. That's been signed, by the way. I expect to get sued. I expect to make lots of money and share it with T-Mobile.
It's funny that you say that genius and insanity. So I have a tattoo on my ribs that actually says genius is insanity right up until it works.
Right. That's it exactly.
It's a motto to live by. Like every
scientist.
every great idea at some point was people were going, "You fucking crazy!
Right.
That's not gonna work."
Right.
And then, bam, microprocessors and cell phones and
airplanes.
I was just gonna say, yeah. Look at the videos of those guys trying to fly, and people saying, "Oh my
the Wright
God,
brothers." They're like,
yeah,
"These
yeah,
fucking
yeah.
assholes over here again." Oh shit!
I was there when they did that.
You know, the neighbors at their house were just like, "Oh, what are they gonna do today?"
Yeah.
Right? Sitting out front with their cup of coffee in the morning, they're riding bicycles, crashing into the grass, trying to jump off hills with wings.
Orville's on the roof again.
Oh, it's gonna be good. Come out and watch.
So he's been busy. It's been over a year now.
It's been over a year.
Putting stuff together.
Yeah.
So we've been DJing. You know, we do a show on the weekends, Saturday Night Vibe, on an app called Mixler. So, you know, people can listen just audio.
Okay.
We're going to talk about this. I really don't care for video when it comes to DJing, at least for house. I think that it's okay for a little while, but for an hour, 2 hours, even, you know, whatever, anything over half an hour, it's got to be very boring for somebody to sit and watch in front of a computer.
No.
You know, I find it interesting. That's okay. We'll definitely get into it.
I can watch Carl
But
Cox
this is
for
my
hours.
side.
I can actually sit there and watch Carl Cox for hours. He's not doing much.
Right.
But I can sit there and watch him.
Once in a while, if I have watched like Dave Morales on YouTube and stuff.
Nicole
and I watch,
Modaber.
But you know what? As opposed to Jazzy Jeff, who's one of my idols, has always been.
Yeah.
That's hip hop. Jazzy plays a little bit of everything, by the way, but he does things. You know, hip hop DJs are doing things. I mean, I play hip hop. I do a few things as far as whether you call it tricks or just scratching and things, but not like a lot of people, and that's fun to watch. So for me, mix show video, I'm a little bit more old school. It's about the music and listening to the music, not just sitting in front of a laptop.
Kids like the screen, though. The kids like
they
the
do.
screen.
I keep telling them that.
They do.
They're addicted.
Apparently
Yeah,
they
exactly.
do.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
not about
very
what
cool.
we like. It's what they like.
But I also like the mystique of audio or DJ being listened to on the radio, or let's say now on the internet.
Get a helmet. Or a bucket.
Without looking at the dick, because hey, listen, that's a mystique. That's all right. You'll have your time.
Get a bucket.
Assuming we have a little time left. But meanwhile, you know what? I've always felt that the video was a little much. I like the mysteriousness of DJ. You know, how, especially for house again. But
I get that.
Not everybody seeing exactly everything that I'm doing. It's almost like, not that you're revealing anything, but you are in a sense. And I don't know that I like the idea that people can see everything, your every emotion or your every movement or what you're doing, your tactics. You know, it's fun to a point. Go ahead. I'm done.
Are you sure?
I'm done. I don't care for video for mixed show.
I know that. But you're gonna have to deal with it.
Not like anybody really cares what we think, right?
There you go. So we've been busy producing. What we usually tend to do is take the older house songs we were just talking about, layer them with some new sounds, and then we jumble them together. Can't think of the name of the song. This Feeling. There's a Robert Owen song called
I'll Be Your Friend.
I'll Be Your Friend. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden. So we took the bass line from that song, and we added some sounds from today's music, the kick, the clap, the snares, and we layered that together, and we made a song called This Feeling. That's one of the songs that we're going to release on the EP that we signed over to Vexor. We did a song with beat from one of Delight's records. I don't know if you remember Delight.
Yeah, I remember.
Which song was that one?
Well, it's called What Is Love.
What is Love, yes.
Yeah, and it was great. For me, it was kind of like an underground track back then. A lot of DJs don't even know it's on the flip side of Groove is in the Heart.
Really?
On the 12-inch, yeah. So anybody out there that has that purple 12-inch, if you flip it over, it should be What Is Love, unless you have a different pressing.
You got that bootleg.
Yeah, unless you have the one-sided bootleg. But the bass, he took a snippet of the bass line, and when he sent me that, I mean, I noticed it right away, and I was like, wow, So he's got a real knack for sampling and putting some things together.
Yeah, so we got a few things in the oven now.
We use vocal from Peach Boys. A lot of the vocals that we've used have been used over and over again, but they're staple, standard vocals. So, but of course, just bits and pieces, snippets, samples. One being the Peach Boys. Need You Now is a track that we're releasing as well.
No, that one's released.
That one's already out. So
out.
we have about 5, I think it's 5 songs, or 5 or 6 already released on Erimarc. So that's available in the stores. Say,
Okay.
at the digital record stores.
Yeah, where can you get where can you download your records?
Amazon, Beatport, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify.
So basically
Juno.
everywhere.
Yes.
everywhere except one, and we kind of never talk about this, so this is probably a good format to do that. And there's things about it too. Track Source is apparently the standard. I don't want to put anybody else down, but for house music, it's like if you're not on Track Source, you may not be considered. I don't believe in all that.
Are you even
stuff.
making music?
Huh?
Are you even making music then?
Right, exactly. So there's a whole thing with Track Source we don't have to get into, but unless you follow certain protocols, you're not going to get on Track Source, and that's okay. That's just the way the business is. It has to do with who's promoting, or rather, how much you're spending. To get stuff out there and things like that. I don't know. You know a little bit more about their rules. We can.
Yeah, we just never did.
Okay. Well, there's something that we just don't want to do to get on Track Source.
No, we just discussed it early on in the days, and we never talked about it since. But we can definitely get on Track Source.
My understanding is that it's not that simple.
It's very simple.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then we'll revisit that. But I was under the distinct impression that there was issues dealing with Track Source.
You don't go directly to Track Source. I'm going to have this conversation.
You have to
on
go
this
through.
podcast.
Yeah, we can. Sure. But it's a thing, right? It is a thing.
You go through a distribution company, and they get you on the
Right.
on the
You
Track
can't
Source.
go. You can't go direct.
No, you cannot.
And that's
You can't go directly to Beatport or anybody else either. So that's why we use Ditto.
Oh, you have to use certain distributors, which means you have to kind of double your efforts and dig into your budget.
Right.
Okay.
So one distributor may do Track Source and this one and that one, but the other distributor may not do Track Source. So now you got overlapping circles,
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we decided early in the days not to do Track Source because I think it was more money than the other places, and it was only going to be just Track Source. So we went with a different company that got us into all
more.
the right. But
Makes
at this
sense.
point, I think it's time for us to get on the Track Source.
See? There we
Yeah.
go.
And we're lucky enough to be working with a guy now, again, Gino, who is always, he puts all his stuff through Track Source. He's had a lot of success, and Gino is going to do a lot of the work.
A lot of the heavy lifting.
He's going to do all the work once he signs it, and to get it out there. And I truly believe that this is going to be a big step for us, because as things go, if we get charted and we're on Track Source and we get charted on Track Source, we'll be on the map, and that's right now
That's the goal.
that's
right?
the goal right now, to get on the map and then go from there.
Get recognized and then just keep going up.
That's it.
So in about 6 weeks we should have that out. So look for us on Track Source, Montana and Barnes, and the EP is named "Set It Off," as is one of the tracks, and it's 4 tracks.
That's why I was going to ask how many tracks. 4?
4.
Yeah,
We're going to
4.
do a whole 4-track release as opposed to just a single. So
Set It Off. Tech Mobile.
Mhm.
This feeling.
My House Is Yours.
Your house. Yes, My House Is Your House. Yeah.
And they're good songs, by the way.
Hope so.
Listen. This is no joke. These are some hot tracks, and they're very different from each other. Tech Mobile being in its own category, but yet Set It Off is very abrasive, which is totally not underground in terms of what I call what you might even consider our style, but it is so original and so good that it's something that I'm comfortable with, and I think is going to do great. It's not traditional underground house as things go, but I'll Be was one of his first productions, and I heard it somehow in an archive, and I told him, I said, listen, this track is great, and we've got nothing but good responses. He refined it, went back to the lab, did some work, and...
Yeah, because when you're a producer, you have projects laying around that you started that you just, never finished. But I was at somebody's house, I was at Keel's house, and he had the old version of the song, and I was like, well, why didn't I ever finish this? And I was going to delete it, actually. He said, no, don't delete it. I like that. I said, you like this one? And he said, yeah, I like that. So I said, okay.
Maybe there's something.
Yeah, there is something to that one. So I went back and I refined it and then cleaned it up. And today it's one of my favorite tracks that we've done.
I've heard that about a lot of different creative processes like that. I'm a big fan of the Joe Rogan podcast, and he talks a lot about like writing writing jokes.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll say, he'll get an idea for a joke where maybe it's the punchline or the premise or whatever,
right.
And he'll start to work it, and he'll pour everything into it, but he never maybe it doesn't come to fruition at that point.
Right.
He puts it to the side, and in a year he comes back to it. Still not, something's missing, and then maybe 2-3 years later that he had this premise that he knew, deep down inside, like there was a joke in there. It was funny.
Right.
Like he had it, and it took that long for it all to come together, for him to get the setup and the punchline and, it all to work perfectly.
Right. And actually, this feeling was about a year.
Yeah, it was one of his first productions.
It was about a year. It just sat around.
And that also goes for, let's say we have 4 songs on the CP. For me, it's I'll Be, or what we used to be called I'll Be. Now we call it This Feeling. And the track we're talking about now, that to me is the track. I mean, I love that track. That's fucking underground. It's like, it's so dirty, and it's like right away raises eyebrows. We've had reaction to it. But it could turn out to be Set It Off or Tech Mobile that comes through as the holy shit track, in terms of whether it be sales or plays. I like plays. I don't care about as much sales,
right.
Just so you know. So if you're going to rip it, just fucking play it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we do with DJs, and this is the way it is today. So let's be for real.
Right.
Recognition is the key, or promotion, getting the name out, and the goal would be to tour, get booked. We obviously right now, I'm not worried about having a booking agent. We're concentrating on putting out tracks. We like keeping a low profile right now, DJ wise. I've done it all. I cannot shy away from that. That's the truth. For me as a DJ, this is a bit of a reinvention. As an individual DJ, it's a reinvention of myself. For over the years, I did a lot of things: radio, mix show, clubs, you name it. I've done it. So there's, it's a big music background, but as far as now, I like what we're doing, and I'm hoping for the best, so, and he's a great partner, as things go. So, and he helped me to, it was just something that happened, and I enjoy listening to him, because I'll be honest with you, if you don't like somebody's style, or you just don't think that they're with your mentality in terms of what you're trying to do, DJing wise or whatever it is, you're not going to try to continue to do things with them. So he and I kind of hit it off. I enjoy listening to him as a DJ, and
vice versa.
He expressed some appreciation this way too. So and as DJs, we always like to be around people that appreciate what we do. So
Sure, of course.
there's an exchange.
Yeah.
There's a genuine exchange of
Ego-driven.
just like any partnership. Just like any partnership, and I've had a lot of partners over the years in different eras of what I've done. The producing, though, for me, back in the day, you had to have. We talk about money. You had to have equipment. You had
Yeah.
to have a studio, whether it be a mini studio or whatever. But you needed the equipment, and it wasn't digital as far as you had. Like I used, not Pro Tools. Voyetra was the program back in the day. SP Gold. This is going back as far as CPROM, before Windows.
Right.
So if
Way
you
back
didn't,
in the
if you
day.
weren't savvy, or if you didn't have all that equipment, MIDI equipment,
Oh yeah. You weren't doing it. No,
you weren't doing anything producing wise.
You need
So
your Moog.
For even to be what we used to call a master mixer. I used to do a lot of edits going back with my older partners, and we were very successful. We did a lot of stuff for Z100 and Hot 97 back in the day when they were still playing dance music and classics. But we invested in a reel-to-reel. We dug into our pockets and all chipped in to buy a reel-to-reel so that we could splice tape, so we could make these versions of these hit records or these hot songs.
Mm-hmm.
We did Everybody Dance Now before by CNC Music Factory before anybody even knew, or before it became a hit. We got a promo and took it and ripped the shit out of it. I still have copies of it. And they just played it on Party 105 the other day. Impact It was a friend of mine who actually, we produced him at one point. So that's another story. But we were trying to become known as hot mixers, as they call them. Take a song, rip it apart. The radio would play it as a special version, just so we did that for Z100 and Hot 97 at one point.
And while we're talking about software, let me give a shout out to Ableton for giving me Live 10 before anybody else got it. Thank you very much.
So
it's very much anticipated.
it was very different back then. So if you didn't have again, we talk about even DJing. If you didn't have Technique 1200s,
You might as well just get the fuck out of here.
no, for,
And I
yeah,
didn't. I didn't have Technic
you can
1200s.
get no. When you start out and you're young, it's different. But if you're gonna go out there and try to do something for real, you need to have 1200s, and the club's
1200.
supposed to
a
have
Denon
their own.
CD player. You need
Right.
Well, that's another thing too. Now you got controllers versus of course you could have decks, and we were just talking about that in the car and what's Denon versus Pioneer and so forth and so on. But nightclubs or clubs in general, I don't even know if people have their own equipment anymore outside of speakers. Everybody
I don't
brings
know.
their own controller, but
Yeah.
most of the bigger clubs I know have, like the real clubs,
Yeah,
call it, have the 2000s. Maybe 4 of them. It's a big investment, but still, you got to have it.
Yeah.
So, but
sure.
I see a lot of places nowadays they want the DJs to bring their own equipment.
Yeah, you gotta bring your own equipment.
It's not unreasonable when all you have to do is bring a little suitcase, But
Except for mine. You got to bring a suitcase and 2 people.
well, he likes things that are
My controller is extremely heavy.
5,000 pounds.
You see
Robust.
We can start
Yes.
carrying records again.
You see, yeah, exactly. You see most controllers and they weigh maybe like this headphone.
Yeah.
But mine has got motorized platters because I like the feel of it because it reminds me of turntables.
Yeah.
But it's 55 pounds by itself. And if I put it in a coffin, that's another, I think.
20,
Yeah. So that's up to now, what, 75
close
pounds?
to 80 pounds.
Yeah. So it's not fun to drag it around, but I love the thing. Love it to death.
It is a great board, but so amazing how things have changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
If you only had to carry 80 pounds back in the day, you'd be like,
Yeah.
it's an easy trip.
Exactly.
Now they have controllers that are turntable size.
Really?
Yeah, because a lot of guys are still using turntables, and that's all great. I love the only thing I say. I really love whether you say it's Serato or the new stuff, because when you have to worry about needles breaking and you have to worry about bumping into the needle or the vibration or anything that's going to screw up, and they're very vulnerable. Turntables. I don't know how I got through, and there were times that were really tough.
Just wanted to punch
Feedback,
somebody. Yeah.
Makes me think
people
of
bumping into the
House
booth.
party.
house party.
Yep.
Well, nightclubs,
Yeah.
right? Nightclubs.
Dragon breath.
That's a house party. A nightclub is not supposed to have a vulnerable situation,
Right.
but a lot of places just didn't really get it, and they would design these beautiful, let's say, nice DJ booths,
yeah.
and they wouldn't isolate the turntables,
Right.
and it's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, they're just sitting there on the table, and you're
It's-
like,
Right.
no, you have to have them.
No,
Right.
as soon as you turn up the bass or the
bass,
song, you're getting feedback through the needle. It's
Yep.
like, are you kidding me? Well, like, come on, guys. But
You spent $100,000
It's-
on this
no, they
system.
would spend-
Right.
I can. You may know or not know, but a lot of these places they would spend a couple of $1 million to put
Oh,
the
yeah,
place
sure.
together.
Sure.
And the DJ booth was a horror show.
Mm.
Yeah.
The equipment or the sound system would be a horror show, and it always amazed me. But they had their priorities. They didn't, and of course the DJ either had a really tiny little space to work in. Nowhere to put your records. Oh yeah, you could put them underneath. Yeah,
Right.
so I could be
So I-
hunched
yeah,
over
yeah.
underneath, looking in the dark for my records all
Exactly. I
night.
can't read this.
So they never really considered the DJ to be important as far as that goes. Yeah, just come with your records and make it happen. Okay,
Right, but as soon as the music stopped,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Then
well,
there
there
was
you
a-
go.
that was a problem.
yeah.
there you go. And it was a privilege. It's like, oh, we're gonna give you $12 a night, and you'll like it, and go tell all your friends, and you can brag about it. Because everybody wants this job, so here's $50 for the night.
Right.
But
Funny.
that's the way it is.
Yeah.
It's
So-
still like, and it's
yeah.
still like that. They're making less now than I made. That's for sure. And I'm not talking, I'm not talking about the guys with the names. And
The normal-
they're
the
not
normal
making
night
nearly
guys,
as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different-
Nobody's
it's a-
making as much
nah,
as
it's
they
a different
were.
world now.
Mm.
It's a completely different world.
Yeah.
So be it. The world moves on, right?
That's it.
You got to learn to
Gotta
adapt.
move with it. That's
Yeah.
right. That's
Adapt and
right.
change. But so when you say the EP was coming out?
About 6 weeks.
About 6
we're
weeks.
basically about to sign the contracts.
Okay.
It's a fairly simple process. So we're finishing up the bios and everything now, and it'll be out soon.
Awesome.
Month and a half.
Make sure you keep us in the loop so we
Yeah,
can
well-
promote it on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah,
I
definitely blow it
appreciate
up
the
and throw
support,
it up.
and I really appreciate you having us here.
Absolutely.
And if your listeners go to SoundCloud, we're under Montano and Barnes.
Montana and Barnes,
Yep.
all right. And your podcast, how'd you say you listen to it?
What podcast?
Oh
Did you
no,
say-
they-
oh, no,
The
no,
show?
I'm sorry, the
weekly
show.
show.
Yeah,
Oh,
the weekly show,
It's a
right.
live. It is a
Yeah,
live
it's a
show,
live
by
show,
the way.
sorry.
Yeah. Yep.
So we do it Saturday nights from 9 until 12 usually, and it's on Mixler.com.
All right.
And Wednesdays, DJ Solo, who's part of our group, is on Wednesdays. He calls it the Hump Day House Party. He is Eric started what he calls the Imperial DJs, and that's kind of really how all this started. And Solo is part of that. We have a guy, Alma Sol, from out of Miami, who is originally from Long Island, who's an old friend of mine, Manny, who is also part of our group as far as the Imperial DJs go. So we had Eric started the whole website and Imperial DJ movement, call it. And then that's when later on we started to refine and actually become a duo, because we actually represent ourselves as a DJ duo. So if you want to compare it to Chus and Ceballos or things like that, that's kind of the same vein of what we're trying to do as DJs. By the way, so it's so yeah, Imperial DJs, DJ Solos on Wednesday nights on Mixler at 9 o'clock, a Hump Day House Party, and our show is the Saturday Night Vibe on Saturdays at 9 o'clock. So download the app, check us out.
It's free, no charge, no sign up.
It's all free. Everything's free. Always. The app is free. The music we play is free. We get it free. And, tune in and check it out.
Yeah.
We have a lot of fun with it. I like the fact that it's live. It's really, and then we also do individually Mixcloud. So kind of all over the place. And sometimes I just can't keep up with this guy. He keeps coming up with all different concepts.
Got to keep it new, keep it fresh.
That's right.
That's
That's it.
Move with the times.
So-
That's right. Gotta keep moving.
Anything else you guys want to plug? Instagram, Facebook, anything like that?
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, they're all the same. / Erimarc Rex, RECS. I think that's all we have, right? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
The website.
Website is erimarcrecords.com. We don't have Bandcamp anymore.
And you do get the whole Eric and Mark thing,
No, I was
right?
wondering. I had no idea.
I picked up on it.
By the way, that was also his idea. We kick things around.
It took me a minute to get it though. After you guys were here last time, I'm like, oh.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming on again.
Thanks for having
A lot
us.
of Fun, and look forward to big things from you guys.
Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Eric, anything?
No, just I'm pretty amped to listen to your new tracks when they come out in a couple of weeks, and like I said, keep us in the loop so we can put them up.